recently talking about his Superman movie that has come out. Things like this, where he says that his film is about politics, an immigrant that comes from other places, and the kindness we have lost. Of course, as Americans, apparently we have lost our kindness, guys. And this, of course, is followed up by what his brother said recently as well, where his brother Sean Gunn says film is pro-immigrant, and if you don't like that, you're not American. Now, of course, he tried to walk back these comments after he realized that he was facing a lot of backlash for the things that he was saying about this.
We wanted a heavy-handed story about political messaging that gets forced down our throats when we really just want to go see a good old-fashioned comic book movie. Thank you, James Gunn. And here it is from Variety. James Gunn says Superman is about an immigrant that comes from other places, how we've lost the value of basic human kindness, and yes, it's about politics.
With the release of Superman locked in for July 11th, Warner Brothers and DC Studios were counting on this film to launch a brand new cinematic universe, one crafted entirely by James Gunn. This wasn't just another superhero movie. It was meant to be the cornerstone of DC's rebirth, a fresh start after years of misfires, recasts, and franchise fatigue. The marketing made that clear. From massive Eiffel Tower light shows to promotional rollouts across major international cities, the studio pulled out all the stops to build anticipation.
Days away from the release of Superman at the box office, James Gunn's Superman, of which he has been front and center in so much of the marketing for this movie. And there's been some missteps. There's been some criticism. You know, Superman is a character that's been around for nearly a century. So virtually everyone knows who he is, and virtually everyone has an opinion on how he should be portrayed. So of course, there's been some very divisive marketing for the movie, shying away from saying truth, justice, in the American way in every way that...
On paper, everything looked like it was finally aligning. But just weeks before the film's premiere, the conversation suddenly shifted. And not because of the story, cast, or visuals. Instead, it veered into unexpected, controversial territory, all because of James Gunn himself. Just as the marketing campaign reached its peak, James Gunn made headlines, not for cinematic brilliance, but for politicizing Superman's message. In interviews and on social media, Gunn openly described the film as pro-immigrant and emphasized political themes within Superman's identity.
James Gunn confirms Superman is about politics, immigration, and the decline of American kindness. Says screw them to jerks who get offended by that. Yes, thank you, James Gunn. This is what we wanted. We wanted a heavy-handed story about political messaging that gets forced down our throats when we really just want to go see a good old-fashioned comic book movie. Thank you, James.
That in itself wasn't shocking. Superman has long been interpreted as a metaphor for immigration. But what stirred outrage was Gunn's aggressive tone. According to growing reports and commentary, he essentially told critics who disagreed with this angle to screw off, drawing a clear line in the sand between his vision and fan expectations. For a character as universal and beloved as Superman, this came off as dismissive and needlessly combative. Fans weren't just disagreeing, many were offended. What should have been a unifying press tour was now divisive, split by Gunn's tone and the backlash it triggered. In an emergency virtual meeting that included Gunn himself, top-level executives confronted him about the statements.
It turns out that both WB's board and CEO David Zaslav recently held an urgent emergency meeting that also included James Gunn remotely, where they expressed serious, deep concerns after his outrageous political statements and demanding those to not watch the film if they don't like the film. Getting political, this comes after James Gunn told many fans to screw off and immediately divided more fans. Already, David Zaslav got involved in a heated exchange with James Gunn that they are taking immediate action by canceling many of his appearances on specific talk shows and even radio shows.
Their concerns weren't just about fan reactions. It was about optics, brand integrity, and the financial risk tied to alienating a portion of the movie-going public just days before release. The tension reportedly escalated, with Zaslav engaging in a heated exchange with Gunn, clearly signaling that this wasn't just a slap on the wrist. To manage the growing PR crisis, Warner Brothers made swift, visible changes, canceling several of Gunn's scheduled talk show and radio appearances, limiting his exposure during the film's rollout. Some planned promotional events were cut entirely, not only as a reprimand, but also as a way to reallocate marketing funds to other projects, no longer placing all their trust in this single release. WB's message was clear. Political controversy has no place in Superman's promotional strategy, and Gunn's public comments crossed a line. James Gunn didn't take the backlash lightly, but instead of backing down, he reportedly became increasingly defiant behind the scenes. After Warner Brothers pulled marketing appearances and warned him about the political direction of his statements, Gunn was said to be fuming over the restrictions. Sources claim he was offended by the studio's moves, viewing them as a direct attack on his creative and personal voice. But WB wasn't finished. In a move to distance the studio from Gunn's growing personal brand, they scrapped plans to label the Blu-ray and digital releases as James Gunn's Superman. Instead, it will now be marketed plainly as Superman, stripping Gunn's name from the home media packaging and digital platforms. This decision marked a symbolic but significant shift. Warner Brothers was no longer willing to center Gunn as the face of the rebooted DC universe, at least not without conditions. The studio also issued a stern internal warning to Gunn. If political commentary continues bleeding into public discourse surrounding Superman, the consequences could extend even further. Multiple projects currently in early development under Gunn's DC roadmap are reportedly on the table for cancellation if this behavior persists. In essence, WB delivered a message with teeth. Dial back the divisiveness, or risk losing the universe you're trying to build. In response to the controversy spiraling out of control, Warner Bros. Has reportedly begun retraining James Gunn on proper public relations, specifically how to handle press for Superman and communicate effectively during its theatrical run. But here's the catch: Gunn isn't playing along. According to insiders, he's been described as stubborn and uncooperative, flat out refusing to restrain his personal beliefs or alter how he engages with fans and media. This has only worsened tensions between him and WB higher-ups, who now find themselves in damage control mode. The studio had hoped to centralize a consistent, apolitical message for the Superman reboot, one that appeals to a broad global audience. But Gunn's unwillingness to compromise has created internal friction, with several executives reportedly up in arms over his social media behavior and provocative interviews. The divide is clear. Gunn wants to tell the story his way, unfiltered and bold, while WB is fighting to salvage the film's marketability in a time when political polarization is a guaranteed risk to box office performance. The clash between vision and corporate strategy has become a defining backdrop to Superman's release cycle, casting a long shadow over its press tour and public perception. In another unexpected twist, Warner Bros. Has made a notable branding decision that clearly reflects the fallout from James Gunn's recent controversies. Originally, the home media release of Superman, including Blu-ray and digital formats, was set to prominently feature the label James Gunn's Superman on its packaging and promotional materials. This approach aimed to leverage Gunn's name recognition as a filmmaker and signal his creative stamp on the DC reboot. However, following the political firestorm and the backlash that erupted across social media and fan circles, WB quietly scrapped that branding entirely. The title will now simply be Superman, with no mention of James Gunn's name on the cover art or digital listings. It's a significant shift, signaling a clear distancing of the studio from Gunn's personal brand during this critical rollout. Insiders say Gunn was reportedly offended by the move, seeing it as a personal slight and a public undercutting of his authorship. It's yet another example of how fractured the relationship between Gunn and WB leadership has become, and how the studio is actively repositioning itself to protect the Superman brand from becoming entangled in further controversy. In response to the spiraling PR situation, Warner Bros. Has taken serious internal measures to contain the damage. Reports confirm that Gunn is now undergoing retraining on how to handle public relations, specifically how to speak about Superman and the broader DCU during interviews and promotional events. This retraining isn't optional. It's a studio mandate designed to keep future appearances from derailing into controversy. Despite this, sources say Gunn is pushing back hard. Behind closed doors, he's described as stubborn and resistant to altering his behavior or toning down his commentary. He reportedly continues to defend his political framing of Superman as essential to the film's message and refuses to sanitize his beliefs for the sake of broader appeal. That refusal has created tension within WB, particularly as more executives urge restraint and neutrality during press appearances to avoid further polarizing audiences. The stakes are higher than ever. With Superman intended as the foundation for the rebooted DC universe, this conflict between personal conviction and corporate messaging is becoming a major risk factor. Gunn's attitude and the studio's uneasy response could shape not just this film's reception, but the future of DC's cinematic trajectory. At the core of this controversy is the fragile future of DC's cinematic universe. Superman isn't just another superhero movie, it's the launchpad for James Gunn's new DCU vision. Every piece of backlash, every divisive comment, and every mishandled press moment has a magnified impact on what comes next. Warner Bros. Has already warned Gunn. Continued political commentary and inflammatory public behavior could result in major consequences, including the cancellation of future DC projects he's attached to. In fact, internal decisions are already being reconsidered, such as dropping the James Gunn Superman branding from Blu-ray and digital releases. Moving forward, the film will simply be labeled Superman, distancing Vite, the product from its creator's increasingly controversial public image. Gunn's situation echoes the PR pitfalls seen in recent Hollywood flops, like Rachel Zegler's Snow White, Backlash, or even Pedro Pascal's Fantastic Four press tour stir. It raises a critical question for WB. Can a franchise survive when its face and voice are sparking outrage rather than excitement? In the end, this Superman reboot may still perform well at the box office, or it might become another divisive flashpoint. One thing is certain, the choices made by Gunn and WB now will reverberate far beyond July 11. They'll determine whether the DCU is reborn in strength or stumbles at the starting line. So, to sum it all up, James Gunn's Superman isn't just facing scrutiny for its story or style, but for the firestorms surrounding its creator. From political messaging woven into the press tour to backlash from Warner Bros. Execs, to canceled appearances and threats of shelving future projects, this film is already a battlefield before it even hits theaters. What started as a bold reboot of the DC universe is now a polarizing cultural flashpoint. And while some fans are still holding out hope, others are already checking out. Not because of the character, but because of the controversy tied to Gunn's words and actions. One thing's for sure, this is more than just a movie now. It's a test for the future of DC, Gunn's vision, and Warner Bros.' ability to manage its biggest assets. How this plays out will tell us everything about where DC Studios goes from here. Will Superman soar or crash under the weight of its own drama? If you want to stay plugged into all the behind-the-scenes drama, breakdowns, and fallout from Hollywood's wildest moments, including more on upcoming chaos like Marvel's Ironheart, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts below. This is far from over, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.